for tuning in. This is Damian Ma here from Macro Polo at the Paulson Institute. We haven't done one of these MP live conversations in a while, I just thought we should try to do a few more of these. And today we actually have I think, a timely and very interesting subject with my guest Lukasz Bednarski, who is the author of the appropriately titled book Lithium. You might be wondering why lithium, what's so important about it, which is what we're going to try to get to throughout the next half an hour of conversation. It's probably one of the most important and fundamental elements to our global economy today and going forward into the future. And we're going to try to unpack a little bit of that throughout our conversation. And just so you know, there will be a video of this live stream afterwards, so you can always watch it on YouTube once we're done. But we want to make sure you tune in, and we just want to have a really interesting and engaging conversation on, I think, probably a defining commodity. Some people call it might be the new oil, and we're going to try to answer that question and see if lithium is indeed the new oil. So I'm coming to you live from Chicago, and Lukasz is in London live. And hi, Lukasz. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for having me here.
So this book, Lithium, very simple title, and it's a very simple element. And so before we get into the whole thing about lithium, I guess, why did you choose to write this book? And tell me a little bit about the process of thinking, why was this important to you?
Yeah. So, I always have been a bit of a self-confessed bookworm. I like to read, all kinds of stuff with I think, the focus on nonfiction. And so, writing a book of some sort was always on my bucket list. I didn't want to be, just on this passive side, exploring literature without, trying to contribute somehow to it. And another reason was that, I looked at the publishing market, and then I saw a lot of books about the other commodities, especially oil, being written for non-specialist, wider audience. But I couldn't find any book on lithium. I even couldn't find any, book about the battery industry, which would be, more of the general nonfiction book, which would provide the reader with introduction to the topic and hopefully make it somehow interesting.
So as someone who has also written a book, I'm always interested in kind of the process. I assume you had a full-time job, and what was that process like? How long did it take you to research and write this book?
Yeah, I mean, I've had drafts, I think, ready for over 2 years, I guess. And then at some point I started to synthesize those drafts, these notes that I took, and I decided to somehow, structure it, to hopefully make it comprehensive, to make it interesting. And, I structured it along a few main points. So one, the rise of the battery industry. I've tried to explain how it started, how it has grown in China. I've tried to underline the importance of the battery industry in China right now, and obviously including all its segments, including lithium. And then I looked at other geographical regions. I looked at so-called lithium triangle, so countries as Argentina, Chile, how they started the lithium industry, how it developed, and what it means to them, for them right now. What opportunities does it create for the future? And then I also tried to move beyond what's now, what's the current picture, and then try to explore the urban mining, so recycling of the battery raw materials, which is not very significant right now, but I just tried to imagine how this landscape could look like in the future, and also application of battery to something more than energy storage systems and electric vehicles. So I tried to look whether electric flight might be possible, whether we could have electrically powered ocean-going vessels one day. And I also tried to elaborate a little bit about where the battery technology is going, what are its limitations, what we can have potentially in the future in the next 10, 15 years.
So I want to get into a lot of that in the conversation, but before we even get there, you've been a commodity trader for many years, and
Yeah.
I know you started off in sort of traditional commodities, and you kind of switched over to lithium, and we were just talking before the session that prices are insane right now, lithium prices. They're $80,000 per ton, right? So is this the craziest you've seen lithium prices?
It is the craziest I've seen. I think that we had the price spike in the end of 2017, and lithium has been making front pages back then. But then after, the price substantially went down, and then the market was rather quiet for some time. Then COVID hit, and U.S.-Chinese trade war, and at some point, we've started to see the prices moving up substantially, and now they reach the highest levels, absolutely historically, going from the level of, say, $10,000-$12,000 per ton to the level of $70,000-$80,000 per ton on the spot market within the year and a half.
So okay, let's unpack a lot of that. How can such a simple element, right? It's got three. It's the atomic number is 3. It's very simple. It's got 3 protons, and but it's $80,000 per ton. So I think it might be useful if you can break down sort of the basics of lithium. What is it? For me, when I think of lithium, when I didn't know much about it, I just think of the old, classic Nirvana song, Lithium, back in the 1990s. That's kind of my most association with the word lithium. So if you can break down, what is it, why it's so important, where is it mostly found, and why is it somehow $80,000 now?
Right. So maybe let's start with what is it? I mean, sometimes people have an experience with lithium in its metallic form. For instance, from the school experiments. In battery, we do not use lithium in its metallic form. We use lithium in form of the chemical. So it looks, basically physically, it looks like a white powder, and this is what goes to the battery. And now, where are we getting it from? It's first of all, it comes from mining, right? So we mine it in different forms, which then needs to undergo processing, chemical processing, in order to end up in the form that you can use in the battery. So we have 2 types of lithium mines out there. One type is typical open pit mining operation. So what typically comes to mind when one imagines the mine. And from these mines, which are mostly situated in Australia right now, you get spodumene concentrate. So just it looks a little bit like a, I don't know, reddish sand, which needs to undergo the chemical processing to be turned either into lithium carbonate or lithium hydroxide. So this white powder that you will use in the battery. And the processing of this spodumene concentrate happens mostly in China right now. China has the world's biggest capacities for processing of lithium chemicals, absolutely dominates the market in this segment. So this is the one route, right, that starts with these open pit mines. Another route, starts in Latin America, in countries as Chile, Argentina. Over there, it's basically a brine mining, which is often also called water mining, because you pumped up from below the ground this type of the very salty solution, which you called brine. It is basically the water, but which contains even more salt than you can find in the ocean water. And then you put it in the series of ponds, and you add different sorts of reagents, and you also rely on the solar energy. So it's you can say in certain way it's very sustainable process, right? in order to produce to precipitate lithium carbonate. Again, this white powder lithium chemical that goes into the battery. And so this lithium carbonate that comes from the South American mines, it depends of what quality it is. Sometimes it goes straight to the battery. Sometimes, again, it needs to go for processing in China. So all the impurities are removed, and then it's used in battery.
So let's stick to the supply side a little bit more. So, kind of go through that journey of where the reserves are. What would you say is the Saudi Arabia of lithium reserves? Is it Australia? Is it China? Is it South America? The lithium triangle? What is it?
Yeah, in the book, I've called Bolivia as a Saudi Arabia of lithium because it has
Bolivia, really.
Bolivia.
I don't think anybody knows that about Bolivia.
Because very, very likely, there are different estimates out there, but very likely they have the biggest lithium resources in the world. But the story of Bolivia is that they were never, commercially extracted and sold. There were different attempts to do that, but Bolivia at the moment, it's not in any way a significant player on the market. But they have the resources with the potential to be developed. It just didn't happen so far. Even if different companies have been trying to do that in Bolivia for the last 20 at least.
So you have the Saudi Arabia of lithium in Bolivia, but it's just sitting in the ground.
It's just sitting on the ground. So if we move away from that, we can say that the countries with the biggest potential right now are Australia, Chile, Argentina to a certain extent.
And how active are Chinese companies, mining companies in South America when it comes to lithium?
Yeah, they don't have a significant operations right now, but they definitely try to secure new resources and buy stakes in new mining projects. So the mines which are expected to come into the operation in the next 10 years, they are very active here, trying to buy at least stakes in different mining operations.
And there's always the concern, right, when it comes to critical minerals like rare earths. People are always concerned that China controls a lot of it, which I tend to think is a little bit exaggerated of how important that really is. Do we see the similar situation or lithium, or is that kind of more distributed?
Yeah, we can argue, I think, that the lithium resources are more distributed, quality lithium resources are more distributed than the rare earth resources. But yes, there are the concerns regarding the Chinese dominance in the industry, the Chinese efforts to secure more of the resources that they control now. But to be honest, this is a system where two blocks are dependent on each other, because China has very little resources domestically that they could develop, that they can explore, that would be of adequate quality to be extracted at costs. So they are highly dependent on the imports of lithium raw material. That's true that they, pretty much control the processing step, but they rely on the resources from external countries.
Now, does China have much domestic lithium resources? Is it in like Xinjiang or Tibet, those places, or?
Yes, you can Xinjiang, Tibet. In case of the Tibet and Xinjiang, obviously the environment is very tough to do the exploration, right? Physically, if we talk about these brine-based operations there, the weather patterns are quite difficult. And also, if we look at the quality of the resource, this resource tends, for instance, to have a lot of the magnesium impurity, which is very difficult and very costly to get rid of. So, I don't think there is, much future in Chinese domestic resources. I think for very long, China, will have to depend on the imports of the raw material for processing, and if Western world doesn't invest more, we would be reliant on Chinese, chemicals coming from this processing.
Right. That's actually perfect. That was going to be my next question. What do you think is more important, sort of the upstream raw materials or kind of the midstream processing in kind of the lithium supply chain?
Yeah, I think both are important. I mean, you cannot have one without the other, right? So it's hard to really say that one is more important. I mean, okay, you can argue that way that resources are more important, right? Because processing capacities you can always build if you invest enough. And in case of the lithium refining,
well, unless you're Bolivia, right? I mean, Bolivia,
yeah,
you have all the resources and you're not doing anything with it. So
yeah, absolutely. So it's difficult to build those. It's expensive to build those. I mean, the average lithium refinery can cost as much as $500 million. So these are big investments which are needed. But if you don't have the resource, you can do anything anyway, right? So
okay, so that's kind of the supply picture. Let's shift to the demand side. And obviously, China figures prominently in your book for obvious reasons. It's a lot of demand, right? It's the processing, but also the end demand because of the significance of its electric vehicles industry and market. So, and I know you spent some time in China, actually in Wuhan of all places, right before the Olympics. So I know you have some China experience as well. But run us through sort of kind of demand picture. Is that mostly China right now, or is it kind of more global as well?
I mean, it definitely changed. But okay, maybe let's start with that. That I think sometimes the effort that China made in order to develop the electric vehicle industry, battery industry, is somehow missing from the general consciousness. In a sense that when we talk about developing the EV, we think about Tesla, but somehow this story of these Chinese companies, which made the cars that sold in great numbers and that were affordable enough for more people to buy, this story is somehow missing from this general discourse. And I've tried to highlight this story more in the book. But now as we move forward, it's hard really to find the automaker which doesn't have some sort of the plans to develop a hybrid or EV offering in the near future. So all the automakers either already do that or they plan to do that. So it stops to be only China and Tesla story.
Right. And many countries, including the United States, seem to have basically 2030 targets, right, for essentially changing their fleets from gasoline to EVs, or for the most part. So you're seeing a huge wave. I mean, we're in 2022, so we're talking about 8 years.
Yeah. So the targets are definitely ambitious, right?
Right. So are we going to see? I mean, we're talking about $80,000 lithium already. I mean, what's the demand going to look like beyond China or globally? And I guess how's that going to work? Are we going to be able to supply enough lithium to accommodate sort of anticipated demand?
Yeah, it's that industry that grows very fast, and I think capacities. So the supply is growing fast, and the demand is growing fast. And when such high rate growth happens, you have often temporary mismatches on the market between the demand and supply. But I think they are mostly temporary. I don't see the fundamental reasons for the world running out of lithium in the next few years and stopping the electrification process.
Right.
I think also that when we look at these price increases that we have here, it's related to the large extent to the changing market structure. I mean, lithium is becoming increasingly a traded element where the people basically speculate by trading this material. You have also all the time the lockdowns happening in China, and you see the freight increases throughout the world, and so logistic plays a role here. It costs more and it takes more time to get the lithium from point A to point B now than it did a year ago or 2 years ago. So you have all these factors, and then there is a last thing that one needs to remember about, that the prices that we mentioned are the prices which are traded on the spot market, and there is a lot of lithium. Actually, most of the lithium is traded on long-term contracts, and their prices are different. So that's not all of the story.
So if I guess I'll push you a little bit more on this. So given the current picture, what if Bolivia doesn't produce more? If it's mainly just Chile and Australia and so on, like, how long do you think this mismatch could last if there's no new supply, because of domestic political risk or constraints or whatever, I guess I'm curious, sort of like, in an inflationary environment, if people are noticing the cost of this clean energy transition is going up because of lithium and a lot of the input factors. I mean, just curious what you think about all of that, just because everyone's very focused on inflation right now.
Yeah. I mean, okay, maybe before I answer that, let's get it straight that Bolivia, to best of my knowledge, doesn't produce, any substantial commercial quantities of lithium.
Right.
So it's they sit on the resource, they try to develop it. Probably again, let's see if it happens, right? But the biggest producers on the raw material side are Australia, Chile, Argentina, and the companies there, they are almost all in the expansion mode, meaning that they are working on introducing or expanding the capacities. Then you have also a lot of the new companies, so-called junior miners, so the basically the mining startups, which often try to secure the capital on the stock exchanges in order to develop the mines. And so you have really a lot of players which try to capitalize on this boom and enter the sector. So I remain optimistic that they can with time address these shortages which we are perhaps experiencing now.
So let me switch gears just a little bit. Obviously, we're going through some geopolitical volatility, right now as well, with Russia and Ukraine and supply chains the way they are. How much are you seeing the current volatility? Is that affecting lithium supplies and prices at all, or not really?
Yeah, no, not really. But maybe to give you a background to the story. Like if we look at Ukraine, I don't think that there is any battery or lithium industry there. Then if we look at Russia, there's one major battery plant in Novosibirsk, and regarding the production of chemicals, they do produce them, but not in the quantities that could somehow distort the balance on the market. And in the past, when they were selling this material, I think most of them went to China. I don't know. Considering the situation, I can only speculate whether China is still buying this material or not. Probably, Chinese companies still are, right? Considering these geopolitical alliances. Regarding the exports from Chile, Argentina, I'm not sure if they still happen. I think do not. So, but to Russia, right? As I said, these processing capacities there are not large, so it doesn't impact the overall market balance. But I think we can look at the situation also from the larger perspective. Or like Europeans, for instance, are worried about the energy supplies with the winter coming. So on one hand, you can argue that it shifts away the focus from this energy transition to addressing these current potential risks. On the other hand, you can argue that we are discovering sometimes how dependent we are on the countries as Russia for energy supplies. So in long run, you can argue that it will give the further incentives to to develop these renewable sources and to develop the battery industry in order to be able to store the energy from these renewable sources.
Mm-hmm. So sticking with kind of geopolitics just a little bit, because the title of this conversation was kind of the analogy of is lithium the new oil, right? And oil obviously always gets caught into geopolitics.
Yeah.
So if you can just speculate a little bit, if we take that analogy a little bit farther, is there a potential to have sort of an OPEC-like organization around lithium if it does indeed become sort of that commodity? What do you think about that?
I think in the past, you had these efforts on behalf of the lithium triangle countries to create something like the Association of Lithium Exporting Countries, but maybe it was too early down the line, and it didn't happen. It wasn't finalized. Geopolitics definitely plays a role in this industry. Like a lot of the companies from battery industry in China receive the different types of the state support in order for it to get developed. Right now there are different worries in different concerns regarding certain countries in the Latin America that lithium industry might become nationalized because the governments see the potential in lithium as the new oil. So the geopolitics certainly plays a big role in this industry. How quickly lithium or will lithium become a new oil? It's difficult to answer in the sense that lithium oil is always traded in large volumes, and if we compare these volumes to the volumes of the lithium which is traded right now, it's nowhere near that level.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So, all right. So geopolitics as one possible area of near-term disruption, maybe or maybe not. But let me kind of end with thinking through a little bit about technology as a potential disruption to lithium, because you hear a lot. Everyone's trying to diversify away from cobalt. Are constantly trying to find different metals that are cheaper or more secure for the batteries. What sort of technologies are you seeing on the horizon that could potentially change the picture on lithium, or not? Or maybe there's nothing on the horizon in the near term.
Yeah, regarding displacing cobalt from this supply chain, that's possible, and it's possible with the old technology, with so-called lithium iron phosphate battery that has been developed a long time ago and which has been iteratively improved by different market players, reaching the stage where the performance that it offers is very close to the level that the batteries which has cobalt inside them offer, right? So that's regarding the cobalt and making the battery more sustainable, let's put it that way. But regarding the technologies of the future, there are different ideas out there. Different startups trying to but most of these technologies beyond the lithium-ion battery are still in the lab stages, and in the industry, it's very difficult to make this jump from what works in the lab to what would work in the mass production, because labs are controlled environments, and if you make one item work, it's sometimes difficult to scale it, very difficult to scale it. But looking at different technologies out there, I think the one which many people on the market think is most likely to replace a lithium-ion battery is the solid-state battery. And the solid-state battery also contains a lithium anode, right? So you have like the three main components of the battery: cathode, electrolyte, anode, and lithium anode in this type of batteries will actually consume many times more lithium than the batteries that we have now. Yeah. So I don't know if there is a future for lithium-ion battery in the perspective of the next 20 years. I think there is a future for lithium in the perspective of the next.
So if we think going back to the 2030 targets, there's not a high probability that we move away from lithium by 2030.
No, and I also think by 2030, I think there is low probability that we would, move away from the lithium ion. So I think that solid state, if they come on the mass market in mass volume, it would be after 2030.
And what do you think about something like hydrogen fuel cell? Bullish, bearish on the technology?
I think it could be a complementary technology. I know that many countries take this approach, like Japan, betting both on hydrogen and for lithium-ion battery, just for different applications. And I think it's smart. You can use hydrogen perhaps a little bit more effectively than lithium-ion battery, for instance, for the long-haul trucks. But yeah, I think if we look at the general applications, I think lithium-ion battery will be much more popular than hydrogen for many different reasons.
Okay, so commercialization, so lithium-ion is here to stay. We're running up against a little bit of time. We can talk about this for another half an hour, I'm sure. But let me end with a bit of sort of a speculative question for you. Mm-hmm. If you were to advise or give a suggestion to advanced economies or advanced markets that want to invest in kind of the battery supply chain, including lithium, mm-hmm. Would you say it's more important to kind of invest in kind of mining the lithium, or to do the midstream processing, or just focus on the downstream?
Yeah, I think it's important to have this whole supply chain, because without all these stages, and sometimes people forget it, because when you follow this discussion in the media, what makes the headlines is either the new battery plant or the new lithium mine, and sometimes it's forgotten that there are so many different stages in between: the lithium processing, the cathode battery component making. Right. If you don't have that, you don't have the battery. But I think now too little focus is on refining of battery raw materials. If I would be pressed to point to something.
Okay. Well, the book by Lukasz is Lithium. He's been a long commodity analyst based in London, and this is a really terrific book, I thought, that really took you through the journey from the upstream to the downstream and got through all the nitty-gritty of technology. Simple element, $80,000 now per ton, so it's crucial. And I think to end this, Lukasz will be available on Twitter to answer any of your questions that you may have that we didn't get to for maybe another 10 or 15 minutes. You can catch him on his handles at Lithium Research, single word, at Lithium Research. And he's nice enough to stay on for 15 minutes if you want to ask him more questions. But this has been a great conversation. I actually learned a lot. And I think this is really an element we need to pay a lot of attention to, and it's going to define a better part of the global economy for the next 10, 15 years. So thank you so much, Lukasz, for spending your time and having a conversation with me. We'll talk again soon. Thank you.
Great. It was a pleasure. Bye.
Bye-bye.